Hi, I'm John Milewski, host of Dialogue. We're on the set of Dialogue, just completed a taping. We were discussing this paper, A National Strategic Narrative by Mr. Y. And this was the subject of the first national conversation held here at the Wilson Center a couple months ago. And joining us today, Rob Litwak, our VP of Programs, and one half of Mr. Y, the co-author of the paper, Captain Wayne Porter, United States Navy. Welcome, gentlemen. Let me ask you this, and this is something I've been thinking about ever since I read your paper initially. Let's say the best case scenario, this actually became, or something like it, the strategic narrative for the United States of America. Where does such a narrative live, and what does it inform? How does it actually work?
Terrific question, and I can tell you, speaking for Puck, the other half of Mr. Y here, what our intention was naively when we came up with this idea in 2009, what our sense was wouldn't it be something if we get the President of the United States to issue a written narrative for the country? Honestly, I don't think it's ever been done, and we naively thought, wouldn't that be something if we could have that kind of touchstone document that other strategies could then derive from for consistency and coherency. And so when we came up with this, the two of us, just on our own, that was kind of what we had in mind, was that it would allow Americans to understand better who we are in this century, but it would allow the rest of the world to see, so that is what's driving the policy and your actions globally. Perhaps it would give them some kind of a metric to hold us against, and clearly I think our values are up to that.
No one can accuse you of a lack of ambition. Writing an essay for the president.
Admiral Mullen would echo that sentiment.
Rob, is there a moment in U.S. history that you could identify as the time when we had the most coherent, widely understood national security narrative?
Well, the Y article really takes off of the X article by George Kennan. And I think that would be the moment you would point to after World War II. The United States emerged from that war as a global power. The Soviet Union was a challenge and a rising power, but the United States at that time controlled probably 40% plus of the world GDP, had a monopoly of nuclear weapons. But the X article by George Kennan was devised to address the rising threat of Soviet power and the Iron Curtain that was descending on Europe. And that document became the touchstone for decades of follow-on Cold War policy, which had bipartisan support, but was a much narrower, as big an issue as it was, the Cold War challenge, it had a narrower focus than that of this article, which talks persuasively about how the domestic sources of American strength have to be wedded to the traditional foreign policy instruments in a more coherent way, and that makes interesting connections that underinvestment in our domestic sources of strength will have foreign policy consequences affect the system as well as American interests, and that's important.
One advantage that the X factor had is one identifiable bad guy that everyone could recognize and rally against. What replaces that now in the Mr. Y narrative?
Opportunity. Our sense is that we are growing beyond in the environment, the strategic environment we live in now, which is so interconnected. Our sense is that we need to grow beyond this threat mentality and look to opportunities to shape the environment of the future. That's truthfully what drove us to do this, was to try to reframe the way that we apply our national influence and strength in a global sense, so that we can reinvigorate our competitiveness, our leadership role globally, which I think the world desperately needs still. And to do it in a positive way so that we recognize there are converging interests, and by pursuing those, we can sufficiently offset diverging and conflicting interests globally.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. If you'd like to hear more from our guests, visit us on the web at wilsoncenter.org. If you look on the upper right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a tab for Dialogue. Click there, and you can find a complete 30-minute interview. Also, you can find a PDF file of the document, the National Strategic Narrative. Thanks.